South Africa's Eastern Cape province to discuss what remains unfinished about Africa's liberation project. Now, the two-day meeting comes 40 years since the passing of Mozambique's first president and liberation icon. For more on this, we're now joined by Dr Nomzamo Ntombela from the Department of Sociology at Rhodes University. Doc, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the invite to discuss this.
Absolutely. Dr. Ntombela, just perhaps give us a sense in terms of why the symposium is particularly important now, 40 years on, and of course, how important it is then to reflect on Machel's legacy.
I think it's especially important given the fact that we're currently facing a moment across the continent, really, where we're struggling and grappling with the interconnectedness of our different histories. So what we've done, or what we're doing for the next 2 days, having started yesterday with young people from across different African countries, is trying to understand what has been the impact of these connections on today's decolonial project, but also how do we take forward what's happening. So I think that the commemoration is not just a nostalgic one, but it's a very action-orientated one to say, how do we take this forward, especially with young people, but also how do we think more critically and honestly about some of these questions and grapple with them today.
Yeah, and I want us to touch on just the theme of the symposium itself, a luta continua, Samora Machel, liberation movements, and the unfinished decolonial project. When we speak about that unfinished liberation project, so to say, how would you define that?
Let me not take this from a scholarly lens. I had the opportunity yesterday to moderate our youth workshop with young people from across South Africa, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Tanzania as well were here. And I think that the unfinishedness of it is, taking it back to the promises that a lot of liberation movements made, not just to their countries, but to young people. And the realities that we face today of unemployment, gender-based violence, and so forth. So it's about taking that project forward in terms of reflecting on what was not done in a very honest way. A lot of the young people said that they felt that our leaders, our forebears are not honest, explicitly honest about some of the things that they faced. And it's about taking it forward in a realistic way, right? Understanding that we're interconnected as Africans, but that we exist in a global order. And how we position ourselves in that is very important because we can't divorce ourselves from it. But it's important that we also have our own identity in it. So it's about trying to rethink that identity and rethink it and position it in a very realistic context of the different issues that we're facing as different countries, which are interrelated, as is coming out from the various talks, and especially from young people yesterday, that Pan-Africanness and interconnectedness.
Yeah. And just, talking about young people, when you look at just, the timing of this particular conversation, if I can call it that, and when you consider what Samora Machel stood for, what do you think he would, think about where we are today, particularly when you incorporate the youth or the young people question? I mean, if you could look at Mozambique, but also maybe countries in the SADC region, what would he say 40 years on?
Yesterday in our conversation with the young people, a slogan that kept coming out was that as young people, we need to push the boat. That's quite literally what they said. And I think that as young people in our various African countries, SADC regions, even beyond that, is we're finding ourselves frustrated, and understandably so, right? You can see in the declining, ever-rising numbers of young people who register for voting. I mean, even recently, I'm not sure what the stats are. So I think we've come to the realization, or at least yesterday it was articulated, that we're frustrated. But like I say, we need to push the boat. We had 56 young people here yesterday for a whole day, and they all kept saying that we need to push the boat in very realistic, but also very small, tangible ways in every way that we are, because we're facing challenges that I think many of them realize through dialogue is not unique to one country, right? So it's also for us as South Africans not essentializing ourselves or making ourselves seem unique or divorced from the struggles that are faced by other countries, but quite literally to push the boat. I think there's no better way I can sort of summarize this point, but that's what the young people said here yesterday, that we need to push the boat as young people, beyond dialogue, beyond frustration, but do small, tangible things to make change. And I think that's what Ubab Samora would want from us, Maluta continue, the struggle continues. It's about pushing the boat, right? It's about recognizing that there is a struggle, but most importantly, pushing the boat.
And that is a call to action, right? That is a call to action for
definitely.
Young people saying, let's push the boat. So just looking at that call to action then, and as we wrap up our conversation, after the symposium, what do you think is important when we talk about either, keeping the memory of Machel and other leaders of his caliber alive, but also moving the conversation forward to reflect, the struggle of today?
So firstly, one of the things that we are doing with the young people and that we've been doing since yesterday is talking about a tangible declaration that we can take from our various institutions on how to take the conversation forward. So I think dialogue is the one thing. The other thing really is I would say, I go back to the earlier point I made about having that impact, that small impact in our very various spaces. So I think that's the one thing that we need to do. But I think another thing, and I say this as an educator, is that I think one thing that we definitely struggle with here is we need to really take seriously the conversation of integrating these histories into our curriculum so that young people actually know these histories and know where the mistakes were, but also how we take it forward in very realistic ways.
Absolutely. Dr. Nomzamo Ntombela, let's leave it there for now, but thank you so much for your time. Dr. Ntombela is with the Sociology Department at Rhodes University.
This Women's Month,